The galaxy's tipping point. The galaxy had always been a place of power, struggles, and conflict. For centuries, different species had fought for control, but there was one constant: humanity's fleet. It was the strongest, most advanced fleet in the galaxy. When the Empire rose to power, it had relied on humanity's strength to keep its control. Without them, the galaxy would surely fall into chaos. But now, something strange had happened. The Empire's once mighty forces were no longer in command. Across the stars, rebellions and uprisings began to spread like wildfire. Systems that had been under the Empire's control for centuries now turned against it. The mighty Galactic Empire, once unshakable, was on the verge of collapse. And the reason? Humanity's fleet, the very fleet that had kept the galaxy in check, was silent. No messages, no warnings, no contact. The Empire's greatest ally was nowhere to be found. It didn't take long for the leaders of the Empire to begin worrying. How could humanity's fleet, the backbone of their power, just disappear? Were they under attack? Had something gone horribly wrong? The commanders in charge of the Empire's military forces were confused, but one thing was clear: without the fleet, they were vulnerable. Every rebellion, every uprising, every challenge now felt like a threat they could no longer ignore at the heart of the Empire. In the capital city of Argon Prime, the Emperor sat in his war room. His advisors surrounded him, their faces filled with concern. The Emperor had always been a man of confidence, his power unmatched, but now even he could feel the weight of uncertainty. "The fleet is silent," the general said, his voice grim. "All attempts to contact them have failed." "How is that possible?" the Emperor asked, his brow furrowing. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. "We don't know, Your Majesty. But what we do know is that the galaxy is changing. Systems are falling apart. The human fleet is missing, and without them, our forces are stretched too thin." The Emperor stood up, pacing the room. He had built his empire on the backs of human soldiers, their fleet a symbol of strength and order. If they had abandoned the galaxy, it meant only one thing: chaos was coming, outside the war room. The galaxy was already showing signs of that chaos. The rebellion on Zareth, once a small band of resistance fighters, had grown into a full-fledged uprising. On Alaris, the Empire's last stronghold, citizens were beginning to question the Empire's authority, while a rising faction of separatists declared their independence. And all the while, the humans, the galaxy's most trusted allies, remained silent. The Emperor had always relied on the might of the human fleet to keep the peace, but now that peace was slipping away. Ships once anchored at the heart of the Empire's military operations were no longer answering calls. Resources, weapons, and soldiers were scattered too thin to make a difference. "Do you believe they have turned against us?" the Emperor asked his top advisor, Colonel Rylan, who had served the Empire for decades. Colonel Rylan hesitated before responding. "It's possible, Your Majesty, but I don't believe they would leave us to fall apart. Not without reason. There has to be something more to this." The Emperor slammed his fist down on the table. "What other reason could there be? We've been their allies, their partners, their masters, and now... Silence. The room fell silent. Each person lost in their own thoughts. What could this silence mean? Were they abandoned, or was there something darker at play? The Emperor felt a cold fear creeping up his spine. The galaxy had relied on humanity's fleet for so long. Without them, what would they become? Would the galaxy descend into madness? Or could the Empire find a way to reclaim its power? Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the uprisings were only getting stronger. On the planet of Ferris, an underground resistance had begun spreading rumors of a new force rising. A force led by humanity's fleet. But it wasn't just a force, they were preparing for something bigger. Something the Empire had never expected. The rumors spoke of new technology, weapons that could destroy entire fleets with a single strike, and strategies that would obliterate the Empire's hold on the galaxy. The people of Ferris, and those from countless other systems, had begun to hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. It leads to rebellion, and rebellion leads to war. The rebels were already rallying behind a new cause, one that promised to defeat the Empire once and for all. And at the heart of this new resistance was the mystery of humanity's fleet. What had happened to them? Why had they disappeared? And what were they planning now? Back in the Empire's capital, a decision was made. The Emperor, desperate to maintain control, ordered his spies to go to Earth to find out what was really going on. Were the humans hiding something, or had they truly turned their back on the galaxy? It was a dangerous move, one that could either save or doom the Empire. The Emperor had no choice. Time was running out. As the spies made their way to Earth, the galaxy continued to spiral into chaos. And with every passing minute, the question lingered. What had happened to humanity's fleet? Were they coming back to save the galaxy, or had they already decided it was too late? The Empire was scrambling, and chaos was quickly becoming the new reality of the galaxy. News of uprisings spread fast. Every day brought another rebellion, another system claiming independence. And through it all, the silence from humanity's fleet persisted, leaving everyone on edge. What had happened to the fleet? What were the humans hiding? The question echoed in the minds of everyone, Empire and Rebel alike. On the war-torn planet of Zaroff, a small but growing faction of rebels had taken control of a crucial Imperial outpost. They were led by an ambitious, sharp-witted leader named Kale, who had once been a high-ranking officer in the Empire's army. Kale had watched the Empire fall apart from the inside, and now, with the fleet gone, he saw his chance. The rebellion's fighters rallied behind him, believing that the only way to truly win freedom was to understand what had happened to humanity's fleet. "We need to know the truth," Kale told his most trusted lieutenants as they gathered in a dimly lit command center. "Humanity's fleet is our key to everything. If they've turned against the Empire, we need to figure out why. If they're planning something else, we need to be ready for it." One of his lieutenants, a young woman named Vela, spoke up. "But what if they're not coming back? What if they've abandoned us?" Kale's eyes narrowed. "That's what the Empire wants us to believe. They've kept us in the dark for too long. They've controlled the galaxy with fear and manipulation, but it's time we found the truth for ourselves." The next day, Kale's team set out on a dangerous mission. They managed to intercept a private Imperial communication message hidden deep within the encrypted network. The message was not for public ears, not even for the average soldier. It was a communication meant only for the Emperor and his closest advisors. The transmission was brief but chilling. "The fleet is not lost. They've made their decision. Humanity has chosen a new path." That message was the first crack in the Empire's armor. Kale and his team decoded the rest of the transmission, and the truth slowly began to reveal itself. Humanity's fleet was not missing, it was merely silent. The fleet had made a conscious decision to sever ties with the Empire. Why? The transmission did not explain, but the words that followed hinted at something even more alarming. "We will face the true enemy soon. Prepare for what's coming." Kale's heart raced. What enemy? What was coming? He gathered his team to discuss the findings. His mind was racing with possibilities. He knew that the Empire had been hiding something, but this was bigger than anything he had imagined. Humanity's fleet was not gone. They were preparing for something that could change the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Empire had begun to question its own existence. The silence from humanity's fleet was beginning to show cracks in their power structure. The Emperor was not known for his patience, and he was running out of time. The more the rebels gained ground, the more the Empire's influence waned. The Emperor had to act quickly to maintain control. In the capital city of Argon Prime, Emperor Malik stood in his private chambers, his hands clasped behind his back. His advisors had given him little good news. The fleet was gone. The Empire's military strength was fractured. And now, there were rumors that humanity's fleet was gearing up for a massive operation, one that could change everything. The Emperor called upon his most trusted general, General Selvar. "General," he said, his voice low, "I need answers. I need to know what is happening with humanity's fleet. I want you to go to Earth, find out what they're really up to." General Selvar, a tall and imposing figure, stood at attention. "Your Majesty, are you sure about this? Sending a team to Earth is dangerous. We have no idea what kind of power they may have now." The Emperor turned sharply, his eyes cold. "Do you question my orders, General? You will go to Earth and bring me the truth, whatever it may be. The galaxy cannot wait any longer." General Selvar bowed. "As you command, Your Majesty." The journey to Earth was not a simple one. It was a dangerous, covert operation, one that would test the loyalty of everyone involved. But General Selvar had no choice. The Empire's fate rested on understanding what humanity was planning. Back in the heart of the rebellion, Kale and Vila were beginning to understand just how deep the mystery ran. They had gained access to more Imperial data and found a hidden message, a warning from humanity's fleet. "We have made the difficult decision. The Empire has failed us. We will no longer fight for them. We will fight for ourselves. The galaxy does not know the true threat, but we do. The time will come when we all must unite." The message was a declaration, a statement of independence. Humanity had made its choice, and Kale knew that the fate of the galaxy now rested on the decisions of a fleet that had once been the Empire's strongest ally. The threat was coming, and the galaxy wasn't prepared for it. Humanity's plan. The galaxy had always been a place of conflict, ruled by power and alliances, where trust was a currency in short supply. But the disappearance of humanity's fleet had shattered the delicate balance, leaving everyone unsure of the next move. The rebellion had grown stronger, but the Empire, despite its cracks, still held the reins of power. Amid all the uncertainty, one question remained: why had humanity gone silent? Kale, the leader of the rebel faction on Zareth, had spent the last few days agonizing over the information he had uncovered. The message he'd intercepted wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. Humanity had made its choice. They were no longer part of the Empire. But that wasn't the most alarming part. The message hinted at something bigger threat the galaxy had not yet seen. "We need to act fast," Kale said to Vela, and the other leaders gathered in their command center. "Humanity's fleet isn't lost. They've cut themselves off from the Empire, and they're preparing for something huge, something the Empire isn't ready for." Vela looked skeptical. But why? Why would they abandon the Empire now? What could possibly be so important? Kale's jaw clenched. I don't know, but it's not just about us. It's about the galaxy. Something else is coming, and humanity is preparing to face it. We need to get to Earth, find out what they know, what they've been hiding, before the Empire does. Meanwhile, General Salvar, the Emperor's most trusted commander, was on his way to Earth. His orders were clear. Get the truth about humanity's fleet. The Emperor needed to know what was really happening. But Salvar couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything as his ship cruised through space toward Earth. General Salvar thought about the state of the galaxy. The Empire was losing its grip, and the rebels were gaining ground. Yet, through it all, humanity had kept their silence. Why? What had happened to turn them against the Empire? And why now, when the galaxy needed them most? Upon reaching Earth, Salvar's team was met with an eerie silence. The once thriving planet seemed to be hiding something the Empire hadn't known about. They landed on the outskirts of the capital city, where the Empire's influence had been minimal. It was a place where humanity had started to build something new, far from the Empire's watchful eye. What is this place? One of Salvar's officers asked, his voice full of awe. This is where it all began, General Salvar replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. This is humanity's heart, the place they've been hiding, preparing for something. But what? They walked through the city's quiet streets, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. It was unlike anything Salvar had expected. There were no signs of military presence, no signs of war. Instead, there was a calm, almost eerie peace. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. After hours of searching, they found what they were looking for, an underground facility hidden deep within the planet's surface. It was well guarded but abandoned, and inside they found the answers. On a massive screen, a message from the human fleet began to play. It was a clear, recorded transmission sent directly from the fleet's command ship. The face of the commander appeared on the screen, his eyes hard and resolute. To the Galactic Empire and all factions of the galaxy, we are humanity. We are not lost, nor have we abandoned you. We have chosen a new path, one that will either unite the galaxy or destroy it. The Empire has failed us. You all have failed. And now we face a threat that is beyond your understanding. A force that will test the very foundation of existence. The message cut off, leaving General Salvar and his team in stunned silence. What does this mean? One of the officers whispered. Salvar's mind raced. A threat beyond our understanding. What could that possibly mean? Humanity had always been a beacon of strength in the galaxy. If they were afraid, then the entire galaxy was in peril. But there was something else, something that disturbed Salvar even more. The fleet had made its choice. They weren't going to save the galaxy. They weren't going to fight for the Empire's survival. They were preparing for something worse. And it wasn't just a military threat. It was a force that could reshape the galaxy, change everything they knew. As Salvar and his team continued to dig into the facility's archives, they uncovered more disturbing information. Humanity had discovered something ancient and powerful. They had found a way to tap into the hidden forces of the universe, forces that could tear through the fabric of space and time itself. What did they find? An officer asked, fear creeping into his voice. Salvar didn't have an answer. The data was unclear, but it was undeniable. Humanity had learned to harness the very energy that powered the galaxy's most dangerous weapons. They had been working on something far beyond the reach of the Empire or any rebel faction. And the more Salvar uncovered, the more he realized that this new power had the potential to destroy everything back on the front lines. Kale had learned of Salvar's findings. The rebel leader knew that the galaxy was standing at a precipice. Humanity's fleet wasn't just breaking away from the Empire, they were preparing for a war that could tear the galaxy apart. They had seen something the rest of the galaxy hadn't. They knew the truth. The galaxy was about to face a force beyond its control. Kale knew that the rebellion had no choice but to align with humanity. If they were to survive, they would need humanity's fleet, its power, and its secrets. But how could they convince them to fight alongside the Empire's enemies? Would humanity see them as allies, or would they view them as another obstacle in their path? The final battle, the galaxy stood on the brink of annihilation, and its inhabitants had no idea just how close they were to the end. The silent, once powerful fleet of humanity, now separated from the Empire, had been preparing for a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. And while the Emperor continued to clutch at power with shaking hands, the rebellion on Zaroff, led by Kale, found itself at a crossroads. What had begun as a quest for truth had now spiraled into a fight for survival. On the planet of Earth, General Selva's findings had shaken the Empire to its core. Humanity's fleet was not missing, nor had it abandoned the galaxy, had made a deliberate choice. And it was preparing for something the Empire could neither understand nor withstand. They had found something beyond the galaxy's current comprehension, a weapon, a force of destruction and creation beyond imagination. Salvar had uncovered a series of messages from the fleet's commanders, explaining in chilling detail the nature of what was coming. It wasn't just war, it was a cosmic reset. Humanity had discovered an ancient force buried deep within the fabric of the universe. It was a power so great it could unravel the laws of physics themselves. The fleet was preparing to wield this power against a threat the galaxy had never faced, one that had been hidden in the shadows for millennia. The fleet's silence wasn't just a tactical decision. It was a warning, Salvar muttered to himself as he gazed at the holographic display in front of him. The message from humanity's fleet had been clear. The galaxy is not ready for what comes next. We are its only hope. But we cannot do it alone. Kale, sitting in the rebel command center on Zaraf, now understood the magnitude of their situation. The fleet wasn't just preparing to fight, the Empire was preparing to save the galaxy. But Kale couldn't ignore the truth. Humanity had already chosen its side, and the rebellion was not part of that equation. What do we do now? Vela asked, her voice tense. The rebel forces were divided. Half saw humanity's actions as a sign of betrayal, while the other half realized that this new threat could wipe out all life. Regardless of allegiance, Kale ran a hand through his hair. We fight. If humanity's fleet has chosen to stand against the galaxy's worst enemy, then we have no choice but to stand with them. We may be enemies of the Empire, but we share the same enemy now. In the heart of the Empire, the Emperor stood before a massive viewing screen, watching the growing chaos unfold across the galaxy. The uprisings, the defections, the loss of control, it was all too much. But there was still one thing he could rely on, the might of the Imperial fleet, which, though weakened, was still formidable. He turned to his advisors. The rebels are growing stronger by the day, and the humans, they are preparing for something unimaginable. We cannot wait any longer. We must act now, before the galaxy falls completely into disarray. The Emperor had never been one to back down, But as he watched the increasing number of messages from the rebels and the growing influence of humanity's fleet, a terrifying realization struck him. They were no longer fighting for power. They were fighting for survival. The battle lines were drawn. On one side stood the Empire, fractured but determined to hold onto its crumbling authority. On the other, humanity's fleet, once its ally, now stood as a force apart, preparing for an enemy that neither the Empire nor the rebellion understood. And in the middle were the rebels, who, though divided, had made a pact with humanity. They would fight alongside the fleet, whatever the cost, as the battle began. The galaxy's largest fleet's empire, humanity, and the rebels clashed in the skies above Zaraf. Kale's forces fought with ferocity, their ragtag fleet a stark contrast to the might of the Empire's forces. But it wasn't the physical clash of ships that would decide the fate of the galaxy. It was the unseen force that humanity had discovered. On the command bridge of humanity's flagship, Commander Lyra stood at the helm, her face grim. The fleet had activated the ancient technology they had uncovered, and with it, they had unlocked the power to manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. "We're ready," she said to her officers, her voice steady but filled with the weight of their mission. "Are you sure?" one officer asked, nervous. Lyra nodded. "We have no choice. If we do not act now, everything will be lost." With a single command, the fleet unleashed the power they had harnessed. A brilliant, blinding light filled the sky as the ancient technology activated. The power was beyond comprehension, tearing through the space-time continuum, warping the very laws of the universe. For a moment, the galaxy stood still as the energy wave rolled across it, erasing all in its path. The Empire's fleet faltered as their ships were thrown off course, their weapons malfunctioning. The rebels were thrown into disarray, but humanity's fleet moved as one, pushing forward with a single purpose: to confront the true enemy that lay just beyond the known universe. And then they arrived. The threat humanity had been preparing for had emerged. A massive, ancient fleet, its ships, dark and formless, appeared on the edges of known space. These were the architects of the destruction that had threatened the galaxy millennia ago. They had been dormant, hidden in the deepest corners of the galaxy, but now they were awake. The enemy had arrived. Humanity's fleet, once part of the Empire, now stood as the galaxy's last line of defense. The battle had only just begun, but one thing was certain: the fate of the galaxy no longer rested in the hands of the Empire or the Rebellion. It rested with humanity's fleet, and as they prepared to face the true enemy, they knew that this battle would either unite the galaxy or destroy it completely.